2 days before I came in, my last day of sobriety. So my anniversary date, so December 8th, 2007, she left a message on my phone because I hadn't seen her in about 6 weeks because I was on another run. And she left this message that said, "Alan, you're going to die. It's time to come back." And she left that message while I was partying, and I didn't hear it. And I passed out, and I woke up the next morning, and I picked the phone up and listened to this message. And I was like, oh my God, this struck me different than it ever did. And I started thinking about, I don't really have to die. If I come back, there are people that are there waiting for me.
It's time for the SHAIR Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host,
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of TSP, the SHAIR Podcast. And today we have Alan Charles joining us on the show. Alan is the author of Walking Out the Other Side, An Addict's Journey from Loneliness to Life. Walking Out the Other Side is a story of a journey from childhood to adulthood, from addiction to sobriety, from fearing life to living joyfully. So join us now as Alan takes us through the dramatic ups and downs of his life, from an adventurous childhood to the tragic early death of his father, his traumatic home life with a mentally ill brother and depressed mother, plummeting him into a 24-year cycle of cocaine addiction that destroys his aspirations, his relationships, and almost kills him, until ultimately he finds recovery and he walks out the other side. It's an amazing journey of recovery you don't want to miss. But first, if you would like to know the best way to show your support for the SHAIR Podcast, here are a few ways you can help. First, go to www.theshairpodcast.com, and there you can sign up for our free newsletter, which will let you know every time a new episode of the SHAIR Podcast comes out. You can leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher Radio. If you would like to know other places that you can listen to the SHAIR Podcast, you can listen to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. If you would like to donate to the SHAIR Podcast, you can do so via PayPal, or you can support us on Patreon. We have a thriving Facebook group that grows daily and has massive participation. Again, it's a private group, so if you would like to discuss recovery, share your experience, strength, and hope, help others, or lean on others for support, be sure to join the Facebook private group. And all of this information can be found on the website. So go to the website, and there you will find all the information that you need to help support the show. So now a quick message from our sponsors, and on to the show. Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map. And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from the 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, Daily Reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get our distribution daily via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends in meetings and with sponsees in recovery. Now back to the show. Hey, Alan, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Omar. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited to have you on the show today. How are you feeling?
I am doing really well. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. So let's dive right in. Folks, today we have Alan Charles joining us on the SHAIR Podcast. And Alan is the author of Walking Out the Other Side. His website is also called Walking Out the Other Side. And most recently, Charles has been doing a lot of public speaking on the discussion of addiction and recovery in schools and businesses and universities. So, Alan, I am very excited to have you once again. Thanks for joining us.
I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your speaking engagements and, is it like a tour or are these scheduled things or do these universities kind of reach out to you? Exactly how does that work?
Well, I'm in the beginning stages of doing this as a business. It started that I wanted to leverage the book and my memoir, obviously on recovery, and my 24-year cocaine addiction, to talk to, I started out, I wanted to give back, and I was wanting to talk to teens and preteens on the dangers of drug abuse. If I can help people not have to go through the horrors and pain and suffering that I went through, that's what it's all about.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so this is a more recent endeavor. So this is kind of something that's happened, in the last year, the last 2 years?
Well, my book came out. It was published in November. And by March of this year, I started to get phone calls about coming out, speaking. I've done some, program speaking in hospitals, but now it's kind of segued to where, I'm out preaching or talking and sharing about the dangers of drug addiction.
Okay, so great. So before we really dive into the book and the website and your story, just tell us a little bit about what your daily routine looks like, including recovery.
Okay. Well, I have a regular job that pays the bills. I'm in the energy business. So I go out to Brooklyn from New York City, but my morning starts early. I'm up somewhere around 5 o'clock. I sit and I do my readings. I have a couple of meditation books and also some literature. So I spend about 10 to 15 minutes before I head down to the gym, get a good workout in, come up, shower, usually out of my apartment by 6:30. I don't know if this is a little too much information.
No, not at all.
And I head out to Brooklyn and work my job. And, at some point during the mid-afternoon, late afternoon, I head back to my apartment in the city. Some days, some nights I do a meeting. Not as much as I did my first couple of years, but now I've got about 8.5 years of sobriety. And then as far as the recovery piece goes, if I'm not in a meeting daily, I call my sponsor. I have a few other people in the fellowship that I reach out to check in and see how they're doing. And hopefully come home. It's a successful day. Do a 10th step, and I'm good to go.
All right. Well, listen, I love to ask this question because especially as you get more clean time, then your routines tend to change. I mean, most of the time when I interview somebody who's in the first 1 to 2 years, they're still doing quite a bit of meetings. And so the bulk of their day has to do with recovery. And for many of us, as the years go on, we incorporate a much more balance in our lives. It does include recovery, but at the same time, there's so many other things that we have going on, especially the working out thing. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you, Alan?
I am 56.
56 years old, and I'm going to, if you guys check out the pictures of Alan on the show notes, 56 years old is in great shape, so the guy he's doing the deal.
Thank you. I am. I work hard, and it's exactly what you just said. It becomes a balance, and I had the same situation where I spent a lot of time in meetings early on, and then fortunately, those gifts you start to get that they talk about, and one of my gifts happens to be my children. I got them back in my life. They were young when I was going through a divorce and had the addiction problem, and it was real bad, and it took Probably a good 2.5 years, almost 3 years before my ex allowed me to have my first sleepover and have my daughters over again and get her trust back. So yeah, it's become more of a balanced schedule. And it still includes plenty of fellowship and plenty of reaching out and working a program of recovery, but I don't do the amount of meetings that I used to do.
I hear you. I got you. Full life now. And yes, those 2-3 years are vital in the beginning to really get that really core foundation going and, make that indirect amends that happens to where the people around you that you hurt or that you cause wreckage, eventually, once the recovery really takes hold, they can see it. It's attraction, not promotion. And after about 2-3 years, it's usually undeniable. So yeah, it's a good thing to keep in mind, because when people come in, yeah, like myself, I wanted everything back immediately. I wanted my wife back, who'd kick me out of the house. I wanted my business back. They kicked me out of the office. It was like, okay, I'm ready now. No, you're not.
Exactly.
So, before, real quick, can you just tell us a little bit about how you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power?
That's very important. And, part of it is I do it on a daily basis. So as I shared previous, I have some readings that I do, and I read through my book. I have some meditation books, and then I also do some meditating. And those are the key factors in my spirituality. And it is a spiritual program. And I also reach out to other addicts, alcoholics, and people that are in my network of that belong to my home group, that happen to have the same sponsor that I have. So I do things every day to I guess fester and nurture my spirituality.
Beautiful. I love it. And you mentioned that you have 8.5 years clean. When is your anniversary date?
It is December 8th, 2007.
2007. Excellent. All right. And how old were you the first time you drank or used drugs? And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
That's a great question. So I had my first drink, I believe it was my senior prom in high school. And I had a couple of drinks, and it wasn't anything spectacular. I started late. I was an athlete. I played baseball in high school. I went to college on a partial baseball scholarship, and that was my dream. And growing up in high school, I would see people, you started to see the kids that all of a sudden they had the red eyes and they were kind of going off from other people and kind of hanging out together. And those, we thought, or we knew that those were the potheads. And we said, oh, how do they do stuff like that? Look at what they're doing. They stop playing sports, they stop hanging out, and they have like their own group. And I was so anti-drug. And then because I played baseball, I watched what I put in my body. And even when I got to college, I drank, and, I started to use alcohol, and it actually brought me out of my shyness. But I never, I didn't go over the line. I was drunk, I partied, but it was more recreational. And then I played a year professionally in the Dominican Republic, professional baseball. And then I had some problems. I was a pitcher, and I had some operations, and that my career was short. And after that, I had a girlfriend, and it was the first relationship that I had, and was in love, and we got engaged, and then that ended. And at that point, I was 24 years old, and I was anti-drug, as I shared. Anytime anything was ever offered to me, I said, no, I don't do things like that. So I was at a point where I had the loss of this relationship, and it was my first love relationship. I finally started to grieve the love and loss of baseball. And at a weak moment, I had a friend who I didn't know at the time was a dealer, and he kept offering me me a line. And finally, at this weak moment, I said and agreed to do it. And I had a knot in my stomach from the time I was 9 years old. My dad had passed unexpectedly. And after I lost my dad, I lived with this knot up until the day that this guy asked me or offered me a line. And when I did that line, that very first line, that knot instantaneously disappeared. And I was like, oh my God, where has this stuff been my entire life? I was addicted, Omar, from the first line.
It sounds like you're telling my story, Alan. I swear to God, it's the same. Like I'm sitting here going, this guy read my bio? So
Wow.
Listen, Alan, you're completely warmed up. I love where this is going. So this is where we're at right now. It's time for me to turn this show over to you. I want you to share your story with us. The battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally, the journey into recovery up until today. I want to hear all about those 24 years of cocaine addiction. So take it away, Alan.
Wow, I've got a lot of talking to do. So I'm gonna fast forward and start to where we are. I just want to go back and say that I kind of lived what you would refer an all-American type life growing up. I had two parents; they were loving. And I grew up in a garden apartment area where we had all kinds of buildings around. There were two-story buildings with 6 apartments in each, and there were children all over the place. And, being that I'm 56 years old, I like to think that I grew up at, just a real safe, incredible time. I grew up in Yonkers, New York. So by the time I was 4 and 5 years old, I was outside playing with 10, 15 kids, and we didn't come in until 8 or 9 o'clock during the summers when the sun started to go down. On the weekends, I was outside by 6:30 in the morning waiting for the other kids to play, and it was just a good time. And as I shared, my life changed forever at 9 when my dad died. And my dad, I was told he died of a heart attack. And I was 9, my brother was 7. The house became pretty dysfunctional after that. My mother checked out after that and basically emotionally abandoned me. I took over the home literally, where my father had a business and owed money, and we had bill collectors coming to the house. And at 9 years old, I was answering the phone and I was answering the door, and I was dealing with these bill collectors telling them my dad had passed. We don't have any money. You want to sue us, do whatever you need to do. But, I just can't do anything to pay you.
Right.
We even had a guy come to repossess my father's car. He was behind, I guess, 3 or 4 payments before he passed. And the guy wanted to talk to my mother, and I said, no, you deal with me. I'm the person that handles this. And I basically said, if I give you the keys back to the car, will this go away? And he said, yes. So I said, come back tomorrow. And I spoke to my mom. My mom said, whatever you think, you handle it. And the guy came back. I gave him the car keys, and that was it. And I was 9 years old at the time.
Wow, man. Oof.
So from there, the household became pretty dysfunctional. My brother ended up with mental illness and was never diagnosed. My mother didn't take him to get help because he refused. And it got worse, where he was breaking things in the house, and it was a disaster. I couldn't wait to escape and go to college. So, as I shared, I played baseball. Went my first year to the University of Miami. I made the team as a walk-on, and they were at the time the national champion. So, I was a little out of my league, but just excited to be away at college. And from there, I ended up transferring. I did make the team as a walk-on at Miami, which was a huge accomplishment. And then from there, I went to transfer to the University of Tampa, played there, graduated. And from there, I went through a process. I didn't get drafted, but I wanted to play so bad, so I was pretty aggressive aggressive and following through, and went to tryout after tryout, and eventually signed a contract to play professionally in the Dominican Republic. Ended up having a real good season, had some arm surgery. My arm just wasn't the same after the surgery. So I was 23 at the time and decided that had my college education. I got further than 99.9% of the people that I lived a dream. I signed a professional contract. I got to play with some ex-major leaguers in the Dominican Republic and basically lived a dream. So I decided to move on. And then, as I shared, got my first real job working for Motorola Communications. And then I met this girl. And in college, I didn't know, or even high school, I didn't know how to have a relationship, and was basically hiding everything. I lived my whole life behind a mask. What I learned from my mom was that if people saw me for who I was, they wouldn't like me. So I lived in fear and behind a mask. All my relationships, whether they were with professors and teachers, whether they were with family, whether they were with friends, whether they were teammates, everything was superficial. I learned to hide my feelings, and I didn't know how to communicate with anybody. So this girl was the first person that I actually opened up a little bit to, but I was afraid to show her everything because I figured she wouldn't, she heard the craziness of my upbringing and my family, that she would run the other way. So I hid a lot of stuff from her. But after the relationship ended, that was the beginning of my cocaine addiction. And as I shared before, I had a 24-year cocaine addiction. Everything that I had, every relationship that I had, so it didn't matter if it was with women, whether it was men friendships, whether it was family, whether it was business. During that 24-year period, I lost everything to cocaine because cocaine was my mistress. Cocaine was the thing that I was in love with. So I proceeded to lose every job I had, and I had some really good jobs. Somehow I don't even know how I was able to work during the addictions, but I was able to be pretty successful. I had a very short marriage that I was using all the time, and we didn't have any children. And when she realized that she wasn't going to be able to change me and I was caught in this addiction, she ended up, we got separated and she filed for divorce.
Yeah.
I had a second marriage, and that was in 2001. And from that marriage, I had two children. My first child, Sammy, was born in November of 2002, and she was actually diagnosed with autism. And then I had my second child, Jordan, who was born in June of 2004. And in the interim, while this was all going on, I was somehow holding a job, was very successful at the job, but I was not being a good husband. I was not being a good father. I was trapped in the grasps of cocaine addiction. And I share this pretty intimately in the book that I wrote, Walking Out the Other Side. And I tell, I can go on for hours and hours. So, I'm just giving you brush strokes here. But, this addiction was fierce.
Yeah.
I struggled for 7 years. I was in and out of the program, counting days. I'd get 5, 10, 20 days together, and then I would go out and relapse. I would get a month together, and I would relapse. I ended up in 4 inpatient places and probably over 15 outpatient programs, and I just couldn't get it. I could not get sober. I was in love with cocaine. One of the treatment centers that I went to, the Caron Foundation, which is in Pennsylvania, my well, it wasn't my therapist, whoever the head guy that was dealing, my counselor. That was the word I was looking for. My counselor, Ron, after hearing my story up until then, he nicknamed me Dead Man Walking. And he said, you're sure as hell been through the ringer. He said, you're ash gray. You don't look like you have much time left. If you don't get it this time, you're probably going to die. And, it kind of scared me a little bit, but not enough. I spent 2 months at that rehab center, came home, relapsed, and then went back that next day, spent 2 more months there. And so from the second time I went back to the Karen Foundation, I had the last 2 months sober. I was able to put together another 2 months sober after I left. That 4-month period was the longest sobriety that I had while that I spent 7 years going out up until the day I finally got clean that I shared with you was December 8th, 2007. I have died in a car accident. I can give you, the stories are just endless. And I'm sure, I'm no different than anybody else that has gone through addiction, that there are plenty of war stories. I just, I'm not going to, I don't choose to glorify the stories.
I agree. With the war stories, but I'm curious. You died in a car accident?
Yeah, you know what? I'll share that one with you. It's not too long a story, but it was after my first marriage. I met a girl that I was partying with, and we spent a couple of days together doing cocaine, drinking tequila, and everything else that goes with that. And I needed to get some money because we needed another cocaine shipment. So I threw on a tank top and some shorts and some flip-flops. It was the middle of the summer, and took my ATM card and my license and jumped in a car, or was ready to jump in a car to go get some money from the ATM. And she said, here, why don't you take this pill? If a cop sees you, she said, you're all messed up. They're going to arrest you. This will take the edge off. So sounded like a good plan, so I didn't ask what she was giving me. I just took it. And I got in the car and had a little Honda CRX, and I was on Interstate 95 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And as I entered the interstate and started driving, I felt myself get groggy. And like I said, I'd been up for a couple of days now, and I was full of cocaine and alcohol. And then the pill was the finishing touch, and I passed out doing 65 miles an hour. And I slumped down to the side, and I hit a wall on the highway, an embankment. And with the miracle or luck or whatever, my higher power, there was an emergency vehicle behind me and saw the entire thing. And they called I guess they called 911. Even though they were, an ambulance, but they needed to get the jaws of life to have me cut out of the car because the car crushed like a tin can.
Jesus.
They used the jaws of life, cut me out of the car, intubated me, because I was dead at the scene. I had punctured lung, collapsed kidney, or collapsed kidney, punctured lung, broken ribs, double concussion. My face was open. Had I not slumped down to the side, the engine was in the back seat and ripped open my face. I would have been decapitated had I not slumped down.
Oh my God.
And they sewed me back up, and I spent 4 days in the hospital. I had no health insurance. The doctor gave me some instructions as they were throwing me out of the hospital, telling me, he said, you shouldn't drive. You need to get follow-up. He said, in addition, I had whatever the pill was and the cocaine and the alcohol in my system. He said, in my estimation, you have a major addiction and drug habit, and you should go get yourself some help. And as I said, he told me I shouldn't drive for 6 months, and I need to do follow-up with another doctor. And I walked out of the hospital, and lo and behold, right down the block was an Enterprise rent-a-car. And I was on a mission, and I was going to do what I intended to do 4 days before. When I was brought into the hospital, I had my credit card and my license that I guess I had in my shorts. And I walked down to the Enterprise rent-a-car, rented a car, went down to an ATM, got money, and went directly to the drug dealer to get my cocaine.
That's amazing. Man, that is textbook drug addiction.
That's exactly what it was. I couldn't have been more than an addict than anybody else. I was textbook there. So so I struggled and I spent 7 years in and out of the program, and to this day I can't tell you exactly what happened. I did have a catalyst. While I was going through divorce proceedings. My ex kept warning me she didn't want me around the kids while I was using, which I didn't do, but she kept me from doing that. And she kept telling me that she was going to have me tested in court, that I need to stop. She was trying to get me to stop. And I showed up for one of the court proceedings, and they said, you're having a surprise random drug test. And I took the test, and I tested positive for cocaine. And the judge said to me that you will not be able to talk or see your kids until you're able to produce weekly clean tests for 6 months.
Wow.
And at that point, I broke down because I knew that there is no way that I could stay sober and test negative for 6 months. And I proceeded to go out on another bender, and I just went on. And it took me another 5 months until I was finally able to get clean. So the not seeing my kids was the catalyst, but it still took me quite some time to process and to continue using. So that's what the addiction part and my disease looked like. So like I said earlier on, I lost everything. I lost my good job. I lost 2 wives. I lost every relationship. And it took me pretty much to a point where I was homeless. And through working a program, and as I shared, it was a slow process. I became hireable again. I got a job. I was going to 5, 6, 7 meetings a week early on, did 90 and 90. And slowly I started to build my life back up. And I got into a different business. I'd been in advertising, and I got into the energy business. And I was able to make some money enough where I was able to continue to pay child support and start taking care of my daughters, as well as to put an apartment over and food and clothing and go to work every day. And I worked a program very hard. I chased after my sponsor. We went through the steps, and that was the biggest part that helped save my life and turn my life around, was working the steps, because I absolutely did not know how to live before I did the steps. And that is how I started to make the amends and repair relationships and get people's trust back, and to feel better about myself, and then start to help other people and put my hand out. And my life got better and better, but not perfect. And finally, about 5 years sober, I made a decision that I was going to write this book. It was on the back of my mind for a long time, but now I believed that I had the ending part of it, or at least as far as the story goes. And so I wrote for 3 years with a ghostwriter, working 2-3 times a week, every night, and spending every night going through my notes and writing and the whole process. And it was very cathartic, both from a successful standpoint, and then feeling the pain and torture of what I did to so many people, including myself. And I got that book done, and it was published in November of 2015. And I find it rather cleansing. And I'm just so happy to be able to give back. And, I get a lot of emails on my website and people asking me questions. And, I put my phone number out there. I have no problem talking to anybody about addiction. If I can help somebody, just one person, it makes me feel like I'm giving back and that my journey was worthwhile. So that's, I think that brings us pretty full circle to where we are right now.
And that's your story.
And that is my story.
Man, Alan, I tell you, as you're going through as you're telling us your story, I can resonate with so much of it. The wreckage, the loss, the control, the lack of control. This disease is so insidious. And once it's got its clutches, deep into you, it does not want to let go. It just doesn't want to let go. And as much as we try and distance ourselves from the disease, it keeps pulling us back in and pulling us back in. And there's, the relapse after relapse. And I remember when my daughter was born, it was that was the moment for me where I decided I've got to do something here. I at this point I had lost my wife. She'd kicked me out of the house. I'd lost my business. They kicked me out of the business. And my wife kicked me out of the house when she was 8 months pregnant. So when my daughter was finally born, I wasn't living at the house, but I was at the hospital when she gave birth. And I got to tell you, man, it's just, for me, I'm grateful because there's people like yourself that their children were part of this. The children had to suffer through some of the addiction. And for me, the moment I held her in my arms, I just knew I had to do something. And I had only started going to meetings 5 months prior. So I was just so new to the program, so new to the fellowship. I had no idea what I was doing or what was happening to me. I just knew that I had found a place where, there was hope. And, I had to start. And if I wanted to have a life and if I wanted to have her in my life, I was pretty sure that this was the path that I was going to have to take. I was going to have to get into recovery and take it seriously. So it just seems like there's so many parallels to your story and mine as we go along. And, the cocaine took me, man. The minute I did that first line, I was done. Hook, line, and sinker. I thought it was the best thing ever invented. I didn't know what took me so long to find it. It was a love affair, man. It was that love affair with cocaine, It's
exactly. Your story is incredible, and I totally connect to it. And it's very similar.
So it took you 3 years to write this book, basically.
Yeah, it did. It was a long journey. We started out. There's a lot of different things, and I didn't have time, or I guess I didn't choose to get into it. But I've been very fortunate. I played baseball and I played professionally, and I have a lot of life situations and exciting adventures from that I share about. Then I was also a professional harness racing driver. So some people might not know what harness racing is. It's horse racing, but instead of being one of those smaller people that are on the back of a horse, which are a jockey, we are behind the horse, which is called a race bike or a sulky. So I'm a little bigger. I wouldn't be small enough to be a jockey, but I'm in pretty good shape and light enough. And I did it as a business for years, and now I do it as a hobby, and I periodically drive in races at the Meadowlands and Freehold Raceway, and then up at Monticello here in New York. So I've had those experiences, and I've had like these Forrest Gump moments. I actually sang on stage with Barry Manilow at Radio City Music Hall.
What?
Yeah.
No. You sang with Barry Manilow.
And there's a video on YouTube to prove it.
I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna post it in your show notes. That's awesome. What did you guys sing?
Can't Smile Without You. And, I've been a huge fan. It's a long story, so I won't get into it. But basically, I saw him at Radio City Music Hall, and I had a sign that I made, and I knew periodically he would call people. But the only people he actually calls, usually he gives the rules, and the rules are that it has to be women only. But I didn't care. I was such a huge fan. I didn't care. I would have brought the sign anyway. But on this particular day, he did not give the rules. But it wouldn't have stopped me anyway. And then, the other thing that I wanted to share, I've had some premonitions in my life. And the night before the concert, I had this premonition, and I woke up knowing I was going to sing with Barry Manilow.
That is beautiful. I love that. These kind of stories, and of course you're in recovery, right? When all this happened, right?
No.
Or were you back? Back in the day?
No, but not the Barry. Yeah. A matter of fact, the Barry Manilow thing and the premonition, I was sober because I had just come out of my second 2-month stint at the Caring Foundation, the end of January 2002, and we had these tickets. And I know the date, it's February 7th, 2002. So I was sober, and I'd been sober a couple of months going into this.
Got it, man. But that's now you got up on stage during a concert.
Yeah, he called me. He started singing Can't Smile Without You. He spotted me in the crowd, called me up, and I sang the entire song with him on stage at Radio City. If you Google Alan Charles, ALAN, and Barry Manilow, that video will come up.
It came right up. I'm looking at it right now. I was already Googling it before I had to see it. That's fantastic. And that's one of my favorite Barry Manilow songs, which is also dating me as well, that I would know who Barry Manilow is. But no, when I was growing up, my parents, huge Barry Manilow fans.
Well, I was too, and I talk all about it in my book. So it's kind of followed me around, and I've had some interesting stories. I mean, I'll even throw out there, just to kind of tease a little bit, I had an encounter with Barry way before that happened. I happened to work the 1983 Super Bowl at Tampa Stadium, and I was on the field, and I was doing some pregame stuff helping out, and lo and behold, I'm sure now you can guess who was singing the national anthem at that particular Super Bowl. Barry Manilow. And he was doing a sound check, and he knocked me over.
What?
He was running. He was on the field with his security. He was going somewhere, and I had my back to him, and he knocked me over. I fell down. I looked up, and he says, and I heard this voice say, "Oh, I'm really sorry." And I look up, and it was Barry Manilow. And his security team took him away. But that was my first encounter.
That is just wild, man. It sounds like you've got 1,001 stories.
That's why I was able to write a book. There are a lot of stories, my friend.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I've got a book inside of me as well. I just can't seem to put it on paper, and now I know why. 2 to 3 nights a week, ghostwriter, 3 years. It's a commitment.
Yeah, it is. I had no idea it was going to take that long. The guy I was working with said we can do it in about a year, and then it just kept going on and on and on. And it was, I literally, when I wrote when we were writing the chapter about my ex-wife, Stacy, and having 2 children with her, my heart broke of the things that I did and the times that I missed early on with my kids and what she went through and my usage. And I spent months going through depression, but I just was on a mission to get this done. So it was heart-wrenching some of the, the bad stuff. I mean, obviously, the baseball stuff and the harness racing stuff and the Barry Manilow stuff, it was a pleasure to write. It was fun, but it was a journey to get through this time to write this book.
Now, when you worked the steps, did you work them in AA or NA?
I worked them in CA.
Okay. Cocaine
CA.
Anonymous.
Yeah, so it's the same way, with AA, and my sponsor has a particular way of doing it, and I kind of liked his way because he said if we do a thorough moral inventory and we get through these steps and we leave no stones unturned, he said, you will never have to come back and do the steps again. Now, you'll work them and you'll live them and you'll do a step 10 at night before you go to sleep. He says, but you will not have to sit back and come through and do steps 4 and 5 and 8 and 9 if we do it thorough. And we took a long time getting through it, and I know different people do it different ways, but it has never been necessary to go back and have to do a formal steps.
Well, it's the reason why I asked. I worked it in the in Narcotics Anonymous, so I used the step working guide, and it took me 4 years to write out all the steps.
So we were assisted with the guide, so I totally get that.
Okay, it's so introspective. It just completely reboots your entire system. And my sponsor told me the exact same thing. He says, if you work this, if you are fearless, and you are open and you're honest, then you'll never have to do it again. You'll do it. You'll work it again with others. You'll work them over and over again as you take other people through the steps. But you yourself, if you do this correctly, won't have to. And it's been the truth. It's
yes, it has.
13 years later, I had 2 typewritten bound notebooks. Where
wow.
Oh no, it was man, I tell you, man, like I said, I related so much with your story because there was just so much wreckage and there was so much that I needed to correct in my life. More importantly was just my perspective about who I was not, the world around me, what it was and what it was not. And there was so much I didn't recognize that I was just living in a deluded state for so long, even before the drugs really took over my life. But, it was so refreshing to just be able to almost just wipe the hard drive completely clean and just install new software. That's what I tell my sponsees. I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to uninstall this software that no longer serves your purpose, and we're going to install new recovery software. And I constantly, like when my sponsees are like, "Hey, let's work the steps," I go, "Okay, this is how we're gonna do it." And they're like, "Ooh, ooh, that's a lot."
It's a little scary one, but it changes your life, and it's just the most amazing experience. And I identify with just about everything that you said. Congratulations on your sobriety. You have a good handle on it, and you're just very informative.
I tell you, man, just like yourself, it works if you work it. I always tell people, nothing that I say is original. It's regurgitated to the best of my ability. But it's stuck, man. It did stick. All right, Alan, this has been awesome. Let's start closing down, though. Let's start closing down, and the way I like to close down is for the newcomer. All right, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, so I'm going to ask you 5 questions about your early recovery, and you're going to respond with inspiring and inspirational answers for our newcomers. So, question number 1. What was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I didn't want it bad enough. I was too far gone in the addiction, and the only reason that I even considered it was because of some of the consequences I was having.
Absolutely. That's exactly. So many of us. It's just the consequences that was like, I can't take this anymore. Up until, most, like for me, God either get me sober or get me out of here. one of the two. That wish for death sometimes is the only thing that's where disease brings us to. So,
absolutely,
the consequences are definitely a very helpful motivating tool. So, number 2, at what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery, when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
Well, you know what? I'm going to take a liberty because I have an interesting story, and I'll try to make it short that I'll add. My spiritual awakening, I had this therapist that I was seeing through when I first got married, my second wife. I started seeing this therapist, and she knew I had an addiction, and most therapists, or at least if you're a good therapist, if you have an addiction, they'll want you to go get help and really not see you until you do get some help. She kept seeing me and pushing me and trying to help me. And eventually, the 2 days before I came in, my last day of sobriety, so my anniversary date, so December 8th, 2007, she left a message on my phone because I hadn't seen her in about 6 weeks because I was on another run. And she left this message that said, "Alan, you're going to die. It's time to come back." And she left that message while I was partying, and I didn't hear it. And I passed out, and I woke up the next morning, and I picked the phone up and listened to this message. And I was like, oh my God, this struck me different than it ever did. And I started thinking about, I don't really have to die. If I come back, there are people that are there waiting for me. And I listened to the message 3 or 4 times because it had to be my spiritual awakening, because it sounded like God was in my therapist's voice. And I called her back. She said, "Promise me you will go to a meeting tonight." And she said, "It has to be somewhere where people know you." And I'd been in and out so much that, I knew a lot of people in a lot of meetings, or at least people knew who I was. And so I went back to this regular meeting on 80th Street between Amsterdam and Broadway. And I crawled back there. And that was it for me. That was the beginning. But that was my spiritual awakening, was that message on the voicemail.
I am so glad I asked you that question. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Man, I absolutely love it. I got chills over here just imagining that moment, just at that, just that rock bottom moment. And you just, without even realizing what you're about to do, you press the play, to listen to the message. And there it is, the voice of God. Is that just wild?
That's crazy. You know what? That's the first time I ever said it that way, because I said, I gave a credit to my therapist and that it was a spiritual awakening, but I never alluded to that God was on that message.
It's absolutely a God shot, no question about it. And, that's a huge part of my story, is that years later I recognize all these aha moments that I had.
Right.
They were all God shots. But of course, at that time, all it is just this fleeting thought that you need to do something right now. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know why, but this time I've got to go do something, right? Like, it just clicked.
Yeah, absolutely.
And boom, you were off to get to a meeting and start that journey all over again. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
It's just, those God shots riddled, throughout those last, especially in that last year, and then in the early year in that early stages of your first year in recovery. God's all over the place.
Yes, he is. That's unbelievable.
No, I love it. And Alan, do you have a favorite book that you would recommend to our newcomers, along with yours? And please, once you tell us your favorite book and then your book, give us your website, how our listeners can reach out to you, all that good stuff.
Okay. So actually, the first, I'm just going to give them, it's a meditation book, and it's called Affirmations for the Inner Child. It's by a person named Raquel Lerner, and it's something that I carry around, and every day it gives you a daily inspiration. And, especially anybody's that, and I think a lot of people, a lot of addicts, may have experienced something to do with their inner child, and some things and issues that have happened. I guess you don't even need to come from a bad household to have, something that happened in your childhood, and you might not feel good about yourself, or something happened for some reason that affected you. And these meditations for the inner child, I find reading them every morning really helps for me to be easy on myself, and to show that it's not my fault, but now I'm responsible for taking care of myself, and everything is okay.
Beautiful. I love it. So now tell us about your book and the best way for our listeners to find you.
Okay. If you Googled Walking Out the Other Side, it's all over the place, fortunately. My book is available at any online retailer. So you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and you put in Walking Out the Other Side, my book will come up. It's also available. I have links on my website, direct links to Amazon and Barnes & Noble. So that, again, my web address is walkingouttheotherside.com, all one word. And in addition to having the book, which is in hardcover and softcover, there's an audio book and there's an ebook so that you can download it to your Kindle. So it's available all over the place.
You have this one on audio?
Yeah, my book is on audio. And the guy that did it for me is the guy that played Barney, Dean Went. He's the voice of Barney, the dinosaur, but it's his real voice.
Oh, no way. Well, you sold me. That's how I'm gonna listen to it. I'm gonna download it. Is it in Audible?
Yeah, it's Audible. Yeah,
Perfect.
You can look it up. You go to audible.com and
that's my next book. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. Good. Another sale. Thank you, Omar.
Listen, I only do audiobooks. That's it. Whenever I always ask my guests, hey, do you have this on audio? And if they do, I'm all over it. So thank you for that. There's so many of us.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's so many of us that do not read.
No, it's so much easier to just plug in a headset and listen to a story.
Okay, I love it. Beautiful. All right, and number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
Best suggestion I ever received. Well, okay. So in the beginning, my thinking was so backwards. So the best suggestion that I was given was that I should ask before I do anything in my first year, because no matter what I'm going to do it wrong. And then they told me, they said, if you can't find your sponsor or somebody else to ask what you should do, just assume you're wrong and don't do anything. So I didn't make many decisions when my first real clean year.
I swear to God, we had the same sponsor too.
Wow.
He literally told me for the first year, do not use your brain. Okay? It is on backwards and it will steer you wrong. All right? So do not make any decisions without calling me first.
How funny is that? That's incredible.
Save my bacon so many times. I can't even tell you. Oh my God. It got to the point where when I was going to ask him for something, as soon as I thought about how I was going to ask him, I already talked myself out of it.
Wow.
It was the wildest thing.
That first year is unbelievable.
It is beautiful. And if you could give our newcomers only one suggestion, what would it be?
Feelings are not facts. It's okay to feel. You're going to get suggestions, you're going to get urges, but that's okay because we're addicts. So it's okay to have the feelings, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to act on it or that there's anything wrong with you for having those feelings. They're just feelings.
100%. That's one of the many slogans or cliches that we get in recovery, and it's a wonderful one.
Yes, it is.
Alan, this has been unbelievable. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, and I really enjoyed speaking to you as well as listening to your story. Thank you so much, Omar.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, folks, we have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the SHAIR Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.theshairpodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-Step Fellowship as a whole. And though we discuss 12-Step recovery,